It is the 30th of the 10th, 2025. The time is 25 minutes to 9. And that means, as always, one thing, that there are a multitude of F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. We'll talk about Susie Wolff's interview, in which she talks about Abu Dhabi. So too, she talks about Toto Wolff, and she talks about how she's taking Mohammed bin Sulayem and the FIA to criminal court in France. It's going to get techier than techie things. We'll talk about Eccleston and Mosley, because Massa isn't having it, is he? He's suing for loss of earnings at the altar of a botched job, he says. Drivers' Championship in 2008. Lewis Hamilton's first one. So too, we'll talk about Ferrari Scuderia, now anxious that they won't win a race in 2025. We'll talk about Tsunoda-san, and so too, we'll talk about Adrian Newey saying that the look and feel of Aston Martin resembles, as at the time of writing, the Bulls that are red back in their heyday. Let's talk about this Susie Wolff thing in the first instance, because this is getting on my nerves. Listen, let me say, for the avoidance of doubt, up front and personal. Here's the thing about new F1 media. Sometimes it and we have a tendency to highlight only the bits and bobs that we want to, the bits that suit our narrative. Confirmation bias, availability heuristic, some say. I've seen on Twitter that Lewis Hamilton fans, stans and evangelists have quoted only a portion of the Susie Wolff rhetoric where she talks about the 2021 circumstance. Of course, the piece that favours their guy, but Susie Wolff goes deeper than that. If you quote the whole thing, you will hear her talk about Max Verstappen and that he was a worthy, no deserving champion in 2021. And again, you get the 2021 circumstance. We don't need to really relitigate for it. Susie Wolff didn't want to cover it. She says to the interviewer earlier on, listen, we don't want to cover Abu Dhabi 2021, do we? For still, it's far too toxic, far too painful. That wound for her and Toto and Lewis, of course, has not yet healed. But I keep seeing all this nonsense about, Lewis should have been the champ. Yeah, you can talk all you want to about Michael Masi, and of course there is validity to that. But to disparage, no, minimise for the exploits of Maximilian Verstappen that year in 21 when he was 23, I feel it would be disingenuous, particularly at the altar of Susie Wolff's comments. So have a listen, chat, and I will link the full podcast in the description. Roll the clip.
Definitely, I was so upset in Abu Dhabi, and not because Max won. He was a deserving champion. It's nothing against Max. It was the way it happened, the fact that Lewis was so deserving on that day. He was the better driver.
Did you hear Susie Wolff just there? Or is it just me? Why is everybody only talking about the second clause and not the first? The very opening of that stanza from Susie Wolff, wife to Toto, went something like this. There's no hard feelings against Max. He was, of course, a deserving champion, for he went brilliantly, as near as makes no difference, all season long against a fire-breathing dragon in Sir Lewis Hamilton. So why, when I talk to Mama Cameron and other cult LH members, do I only get the second piece of it, that Lewis Hamilton was the better driver that day? You've got to play back. I swear, you've got to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or do not tell it at all. Why? Each and every single time I'm ready to lose my mind and go scorched earth at these half-truths. Again, what we will never ever do on this channel is sacrifice truth value nor objectivity at the altar, a cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker. Don't underplay Max Verstappen's achievements, for that would be to underplay Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton was a fire-breathing dragon in 2021, one of the greatest seasons in history that I've ever seen. And Susie Wolff concurs. What are we doing here, Michael? Carlos Sainz will come on to him. Carlos not feeling it at the moment. Sainz is like that bitter ex-girlfriend. Ferrari left him for the black guy, Lewis Techie. Oh, the humanity, Michael. Is that where we're going so early on into the stream? Let me play the rest of this Susie Wolff, because I think it's important. We'll restart it. And again, I want you to hear what she really said, not half of it at the altar of any Lewis Hamilton fandom. Listen keenly.
Definitely, I was so upset in Abu Dhabi, and not because Max won. He was a deserving champion. It's nothing against Max. It was the way it happened, the fact that Lewis was so deserving on that day. He was the better driver. He was winning that race. So it really upset me. But Toto's really good about getting his emotions in check quite quickly. And even when Lewis left for Ferrari, I got upset quite quickly as to how it was done. But he said, we're going to be okay. You know, we're going to be friends with Lewis, and this is all going to be okay. Just give it time. Definitely.
That's chaos. I think it's disingenuous of the F1 media to report that as Lewis deserved to win. That's only half the sentence, right? Of course, Michael Massey, the decision was egregious. I get it. I understand it. And I'm with that. Of course, it's the truth. But bloody Nora, we're going to tell half the story. We're going to tell the whole truth here. Props to Susie Wolff. And she continues. She talks about the ongoing circumstance between her, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and the FIA. Lest we forget, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is wrapped up in red tape, the litigation red tape, as at the time of writing. In the first instance, you've got the high-tech guys that are like, hang on, you're going to decline our entry to become the 11th team on the grid at the altar of financial resource. Behave yourself. Look at all this financial resource that we have in our financial statements. That's going on. Arbitration in tow yet and still. In the second instance, Susie Wolff was like, what? Conflict of interest? What conflict of interest, Mohammed Ben Sulayem? What are you investigating me for? Where is the evidence? And again, these things are damaging, aren't they? Defamation. Some say. Susie was like, I'm not having that. You can question me on anything. But what you can't question me on, Susie Wolff says, is my integrity. I've never talked to Toto, even though he's my husband, about anything that could bring me into breach of conflict of interest. You are questioning, therefore, my reputation as a person. Susie said, you know what? I'll see you this. And I see you that even, and raise you this litigation. I will see you in French criminal court, is what Susie Wolff said. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is still ongoing. Z, you're an absolute legend. Yeah, boy, we go again. Oh, and by the way, props to Susie Wolff for being as open and honest. I'll link the full pod in the description so you guys can go and have a listen. Oh, and by the way, Ferrari are doing Ferrari things, as they always do, talking about anxiety at the altar of another winless season. In the first instance, Charles Leclerc's been picking up right. He hasn't been going too well too badly even over the past couple Grand Prix, outperforming what ostensibly is a donkey of a car. Again, you know the story already. Lacks rigidity as far as the suspension at the rear. It's twitchy. It's understeery to snap oversteer. They can't run it low enough to optimise for the downforce that the Venturi tunnels are pulling in what a ground effect era. What are we doing? They came into 2025 with, some say, the quickest car on the grid. They were a hair's breadth away from a cheeky Constructors' Championship. And what did they do? Before you continuously improve and develop that car upwards, they decided that they were going to reconstruct the car and change 90% of the components. Of course, Frederick Vasseur, because that makes sense. Because we are Ferrari. We are Ferrari, and we have made a career and an industry out of seizing defeat on the jaws of victory. Now they are facing a winless season. You know already the broader political circumstance. John Elkann is looking at Frederick Vasseur with a side eye. Do I really want you here, or do I really want Christian Horner, a fire-breathing dragon of a team principal? And a valid question that John Elkann might ask, given the lack of success in recent years of Scuderia Ferrari. And it's not just that they're losing, it's how badly they're losing and what it looks like. We are checking plan A, B and C. Charles Leclerc coming up. It's no, stay out. They're bringing the Enzo Ferrari name into disrepute. Enzo will be turning in his grave. So we have this conversation under the umbrella heading of it being a difference in extents and not kinds. They're not just losing, they're losing badly. It's a disgrace. And herein lies the issue, that all of the Ferrari guys have been in this working culture, a suffocating working culture that stifles development and stifles innovation. Lest we forget that people have worked there and left and said, listen, everybody's just afraid to make a mistake. The stop loss, therefore, is set too tight. And that's why you hear them over the radio, Bosey and Adami to Lewis Hamilton, giving them too much information, stifling their growth because they just don't want to get sacked. There is this weird dictatorial working culture within which all of the innovation just fades to black. And now what they're fearing, Ferrari, they're looking at Lewis. Has that paid off? Some of them wanted Sainz not to leave. Some of them didn't want Lewis to join. Some of them wanted Ferrari to sign, to spend all them Lewis Hamilton dollars on Adrian Newey. And now they are all scared that Ferrari are going to go 2025 entire without a victory. Oh, and by the way, if, as at Abu Dhabi, Scuderia Ferrari have not won themselves a race this year, they will be the only team of the top 4. And that's not good enough, is it? How do you attract the best personnel if you look like losers? Scuderia Ferrari, they have been bringing shame on the family name, and I don't think it's good enough, I'll be honest with you. Now, am I blaming this on Lewis? Absolutely not, but he is, and still 50 points adrift of Charles Leclerc in the championship. Now, some will say, of course, Lewis, it took, how many years did it take Schumacher to win in a Ferrari? Moved there, if I recall, in 96, 97, 98, 99, and only in 2000. It will take you time to acclimatise to Maranello and Fiorani. It's techier than techie things over there, but and still, men lie, women lie. Stats tell the truth. They do not. What's going on, Danny? You're a legend. If Lewis was in Charles' place in lap 1, Ferrari would crying, and FIA would say give it back to potentially. They do like to throw a cheeky penalty at Lewis, don't they? If past his prologue. Well thought out too, because why didn't he say this before? TWM, you're a legend, by the way. Ferrari historically have always been able to get their way politically behind the scenes. I'm disappointed that they have not leveraged this with Sir Lewis Hamilton by their side, especially not arguing for a penalty against Matt. So go on and let's talk about this. TWM talks to the context as follows, and TWM is right that in yesteryear, erstwhile, FIA were referred to as Ferrari International Assistance. Every time there was a marginal call, Ferrari would get the rub of the green, and it got a bit techie. Sebastian Vettel definitely, Michael Schumacher definitely. You know already that Michael Schumacher, some say that he won all his championships as a function of preferential treatment because of the tyres. Was it Bridgestone or Michelin? I can't remember which, but whichever team designed the tyres for Ferrari got all of the investment, all of the due diligence, that those tyres were pretty much designed for Scuderia Ferrari exclusively. That's why the fiasco around the US Grand Prix kicked off way back when, because only them boys had the proper tyres. So listen, I agree with you, TWM, but I think their influence over the FIA, because of their wins or lack thereof, is loud. Now everybody's deserving of a championship until they're not. It was the last lap for the 8th. Says Nando, you're a legend, Nando, as well, by the way. Go on then, let me tell you about this in addition to Ferrari, because it's going to get techie. Tsunoda-san, Jacques Villeneuve had some things to say. And again, I don't hate Jacques Villeneuve. I don't hate it. I don't like him as a person necessarily, but it doesn't matter whether I like or loathe that chap. We're talking about him as a pundit, and I think we need more straight shooters in F1 like Jacques Villeneuve. Doesn't hesitate to drop a cheeky soundbite. I think we need more of Jacques Villeneuve and Nico Rosberg, these straight and thinking shooters of F1 pundits. Jacques Villeneuve has come out and he's talked about Tsunoda-san. The context here, though, is key. Lest we forget that the likes of Mekis and Dr. Helmut Marko said that there was news pending around the Mexican Grand Prix about Yuki Tsunoda. And potentially, we'd see him either kept through to 2026 or binned off. Now, many of us speculated that Tsunoda-san there's no room at the Red Bull Inn for him, because Arvid Lindblad will get himself a cheeky promotion. They'll keep Liam Lawson at Racing Bulls, and they'll promote, more than likely, Isaac Hadjar. So how does Tsunoda-san fit into that driver's equation? Maybe as a reserve driver, but then you realise that the $20 million that Honda, as an engine manufacturer, has been sponsoring Tsunoda, paying to Red Bull, will go away as of next year. Big rule and reg set change. Aston Martin will be collaborating with Honda. And then why would Honda give Red Bull $20 million thereafter? What, to continue sponsor Tsunoda-san? Absolutely bloody not. Jacques Villeneuve, however, in the latest and greatest F1 Sky F1 podcast, said something to this effect, that Red Bull have been protecting Yuki Tsunoda. What? Houseway? Protecting him from what? That in delaying his them wielding the sword of Damocles, them getting rid of Tsunoda-san, that potentially they're circling the wagons around their weak link. This is techie. So Charles Edward, Content King, let's go. Leave a like. So Charles Edward, I appreciate you, sir. Ad infinitum. I'm going to drop you an email, by the way, mate. Tsunoda-san, I don't think they've been protecting Tsunoda-san. Let's have the conversation at Abu Dhabi when they get rid of him. You know what I mean? He won't be a Red Bull racing driver for much longer. Unless we forget at Abu Dhabi this time last year, when he was meant to be doing testing, all of the C-suite exec level decision makers sacked it off and didn't hang around. Dr. Helmut Marko was the only one that stayed when Tsunoda-san was testing to monitor his progress. When all the Red Bull racing engineers were talking about the dexterity, the rich texture of his feedback, how useful it is to hear from Tsunoda for engineers what he's saying about the car and its handling dynamic. Christian Horner et al. Weren't even there. The likes of Pierre Vacher and Rico Balbo didn't even hang around. That tells you all you need to know what they think about the one that they call Tsunoda-san. Oh, and by the way, if we're speaking of those who will soon be formally of the parish that is Red Bull Racing, Adrian Newey's come out and he said some things. He says that it feels like it's deja vu over at Aston Martin, that potentially they've still got things to amend for, that there is still room for improvement, but broadly he says it's reminiscent of Red Bull as they were about to go into their rich vein of thought. I don't know if I agree with him. You know, Adrian Newey is the only person that can save Aston Martin. Alonso's aging. Lance Stroll has been aging. I mean, where's his underperformance PLC? Of course, nowhere. And do you think they'll sack him off? No, they won't, because his daddy owns the bloody business. Now, Lawrence Stroll is, of course, doing some weird stuff, restructuring and equity in the background around Aston Martin Lagonda, the car manufacturer, not the F1 team. All the Mercedes bods who own a minority sharehold of Aston Martin Lagonda have been turning up, seen around their offices of like, something is going on, but I don't know what. Maybe Lawrence Stroll potentially wants to cash in his chips. Do you know what I mean? Realise some capital appreciation, potentially. Or maybe he wants to see his son Lance as a champion, but that's never going to happen, is it? Like, what are we doing here? Never going to happen, of course, because Santa Claus is going to come down my chimney this year and deliver my presents in my hand. Do you know what I mean? Calling me naive, Lance Stroll. It's never going to happen. What are we doing here? It's I don't know. I'm rooting. I'd love to see Lando do something. I'd love to see Adrian Newey design himself yet another god tier car. What's the Adrian Newey stat? 12 driver championships, 13 constructors. If there were such a thing as a guarantee for championships in Formula One in the form of an aerodynamicist, then the last airbender, Adrian Newey, would be that. But I don't know, chap. I don't know. Adrian's the type of guy that needs the circumstances around him to thrive, to survive. And I'm not sure he has that at the moment around Aston Martin, of course. And again, he told us that earlier on this season in an interview where he said, yeah, you can throw money at this thing all you want to, but it's devilment and skullduggery and the ability to navigate within the shaded grey areas. That's what will win you your people in the right places. That's what will win you a championship. Adrian Newey, the last airbender, said. How do you think Red Bull won all theirs? They've got a wind tunnel that's 1,000 gazillion years old, and still look how full their trophy cabinet is. Adrian Newey's looking at Lawrence Stroll like, hang on, mate. All this 250 million capital infrastructure spend by dint of the bloody factory, another 50 million wind tunnel, that all fades to black unless you have the right people in the right places. Yeah, you can say Andy Cowell was god tier in 2014. Mercedes split turbo hybrid era. I mean, his era was 8 constructors championship, yielded 8 constructors championships back to back for Mercedes. Now that they've got him, of course, he's going to be an asset. But Honda, I don't know, chat. New rule and reg spec. Honda just coming back in proper. I'm not sure. Maybe Adrian Newey's right. Maybe it is deja vu over there, and that the feeling is very much like Red Bull. But your boy over here, I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but nor I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect from Aston Martin. I'm hoping that they go well. And again, the rumour, if speculation is to be believed, is that they might be in for Max Verstappen. That conversation have and will be had about securing Max 4 soon to be 5-time champion services. Go on then. In other news, Eccleston and Mosley. Felipe Massa's not having it, is he? He wants his championship. The championship that Lewis Hamilton wrestled illegitimately from his grasp in 2008. Behave yourself, Felipe Massa. What are you talking about? All the F1 aficionados are chiming in on this. Mate, the reason why you lost the championship wasn't because of Crashgate in 2008. It's because of mistakes that you made then. It was because Lewis Hamilton was the best driver, as near as makes no difference, all season. What are you talking about, Felipe Massa? Lewis Hamilton, that year, if you watch 08, Lewis Hamilton was pulling the switch back as near as makes no difference. Every single corner on Felipe Massa. Nobody's not going to tell me that Felipe Massa deserves that championship. What is it? 2025. You're talking about 2008. How many different championships are we going to go back and revisit and reappraise for Felipe Massa? But again, it's in the courts this week, isn't it? And Massa's lawyers are having a field day, claiming that the head honchos, the C-suite execs in Bernie Eccleston, head honcho then of the equivalent of Liberty Media, F1 Proper, the commercial rights holder, and Max Mosley, the FIA's guy, then the equivalent of Mohammed Ben Sulayem, that they both knew and deliberately concealed all of the information pertaining to the Crashgate conspiracy. Listen, that's as may be, Felipe Massa. But what do you want to do though, Cha? What do you want to do? Do you want to race? What are we talking about? Now, Felipe Massa's thesis, to his credit, goes something like this. If you null and void Crashgate, because of course he's talking about Fernando Alonso yeeting it, Fernando Alonso's teammate Nelson Piquet yeeting it into the barrier early to make sure that Alonso's early pit stop yielded dividends and put him in the best position to win a race that year, with a flagging, underperforming Renault, Fabio Briatore Renault then. In its context, I understand why Felipe Massa will feel aggrieved, but mate, you got to bring these, time and place right. You can't bring this up nearly 20 years after the fact. It's gone, mate. This is sunk cost. Lewis has been celebrating. What are you going to do, really? And to boot, there is a precedent for this, because last year there was a team, I can't remember the bloody formula, but there was a team that decided they were going to protest and try and get a race overturned, like so many Lewis Hamilton fans said Mercedes and Toto should have done in 2021. Likewise, that Felipe Massa's trying to do now. They protest and they had it overturned, only for a court to then rule to overturn the overturn and reinstate the initial verdict. So what are we doing, Felipe Massa? If you get it overturned, if past this prologue in court, then they're just going to overturn it. I just don't understand. I think this chap's doing it for I was never a big Felipe Massa fan. Obviously he had his career, the end of his career was untimely. The bloody nut hitting him in his head, they could have killed it. Like, I get it. I understand Felipe. But now, why now, sir? He's asking for 60 million. I read 80 million US dollars. All the lost opportunities of being a world championship is money. Yeah, but what are we like? This is sport, man. Go on, let me say this in closing. This is civil cases usually have an expiry date. It's nuts. I don't understand it, TWM. Here's what I will say to Felipe Massa. I understand that you feel aggrieved. So I get it. But how far is too far? Where do you draw the line and say that enough is enough? Are we going to go back to 1950 and Fangio's bloody reliability in the first race ever in F1 history? Fangio would have nailed that, but Nino Farina got it. Do you know what I mean? What are you going to do? Are you going to go? How far do you go back and reappraise for championships? What are you doing? I understand it, Felipe Massa. You have a case in the court of popular opinion, and particularly if there is such a thing as the moral high ground, what's true and fair and just. I get it, Felipe Massa, but to expect loss of earnings, what do you mean? To the tune of 80 million? Behave yourself. Listen, F1 is a corrupt space. It's a piranha's tank of a sporting endeavour, said Ron Dennis once upon a time. And I don't disagree with him. But with that, as a function of that, comes skullduggery, right? You cannot separate the two. Indeed, some will say of F1 that they are synonyms of each other, skullduggery and the sporting endeavour that is F1. I don't know. Good luck to you, Felipe Massa, but overturning Sir Lewis Hamilton's first championship ever, I don't think that's the tree up which you want to be barking. As always, it gets techier than techie things. Little League, I tell you, he's a Little League champion 1997. Oh, you're talking about Jacques Villeneuve. I'll speak to Jacques very quickly. I thought Jacques Villeneuve was incredible. I wanted anybody at the time to beat Michael Schumacher. I'm not going to lie to you. I rooted really, really hard for Jacques Villeneuve. But ever since 1997, Jacques Villeneuve has proven himself as a driver to be a one-trick pony. Shortly thereafter, as his career did one of these. Now, is he good as a pundit? Some people love him, some people hate him. But I appreciate his ability to stand up there and put a microphone in front of his face and shoot straight. Checo Perez, Tsunoda-san, all of them can get it. He doesn't what's the word that I'm looking for? He doesn't pull any punches. And I think in the weird and wacky world that is F1, we need more of that straight shooters, the likes of which you've got Windsor, of course, you've got Jacques Villeneuve, Nico Rosberg. We need more people like this. It's dead and buried now for these guys to stand up and do that after you clawed F1 punditry. Why? Because other sports and other endeavours, other franchises will come in and steal F1's lunch money, rhetorically speaking. Going to get techier than techie things. Listen, we'll catch up again. Proper renewed normal schedule kicks off tomorrow, 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. We go again live. Between now and then, what are we doing? Yeah.